Part 1. The Gala Hall of the Golden Crown Hotel glittered like a jewel box suspended above the city. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed a skyline drowned in golden light, while crystal chandeliers shimmered like captured constellations. A string quartet played near the marble fountain, their music smooth and expensive, like everything else in the room. Waiters in white gloves moved silently between clusters of powerful people. Laughter rose in polished waves. Champagne sparkled. Deals were being sealed with handshakes that carried the weight of millions. And along the edge of this brilliance, nearly invisible against the tall velvet curtains, moved Amina. Her gray uniform blended into the background. A name tag, slightly scratched, rested against her chest. She pushed her cart slowly, carefully, wiping fingerprints from glass panels, polishing brass rails, ensuring the elite celebration remained flawless. No one greeted her. No one asked her name. She had worked at the hotel for 3 years. She arrived before sunrise and often left long after midnight. She knew every hidden corridor, every creak in the service elevators, every stain that marble pretended not to keep. She also knew how people looked through her. Tonight's event was the largest the hotel had hosted that year. International investors, diplomats, executives. The energy was electric. At the center of it all stood Victor Carolyn. Tall, broad-shouldered, impeccably dressed in a tailored black suit, he carried himself like a man who owned not only companies but destinies. His voice cut clearly through conversations. When he laughed, others laughed louder. Victor was known for his rise from modest beginnings to immense wealth. He told the story often, how he had started with nothing and built an empire of construction firms and foreign contracts. But somewhere along that climb, humility had slipped from his grasp. He enjoyed being admired. He enjoyed being feared even more. Intelligence, Victor declared to a small circle of investors, swirling champagne in his glass, is the only true currency in this world. The rest follows naturally. A few men nodded approvingly. He adjusted his cufflinks. I don't tolerate incompetence. I don't tolerate weakness. That's why I win. As he spoke, his gaze wandered lazily across the room, and landed on Amina. She was kneeling slightly to wipe a faint scuff from the marble pillar beside the stage. Victor's lips curved. See, he said quietly to the group, tilting his head toward her. Everyone has their place. One of the younger investors shifted uncomfortably. Victor. But Victor was already walking. Each step toward her was deliberate. Conversation softened as people sensed something about to happen. Victor loved an audience. Amina felt his shadow fall across her before she looked up. Yes, sir, she asked politely, rising to her feet. Up close, Victor could see that she was not as old as he had assumed. There was something composed in her expression. Calm, alert. He ignored it. What's your name? He asked, though his tone suggested he did not truly care. Amina. Well, Amina, he said loudly, turning slightly so others could hear. Tell me, do you understand what we're celebrating tonight? She met his gaze without challenge. A successful partnership, sir. A few people smiled faintly at her answer. Victor chuckled. That's a rehearsed line, isn't it? No, sir. He raised a thick leather folder in his hand. This contract, he announced, is worth more than this entire hotel. He paused for effect. It's written in Arabic, complicated legal language. My foreign partners insisted. He leaned slightly closer to her. If you're so smart, he said mockingly, his voice carrying across the marble, translate this. The nearby guests turned openly now. A ripple of laughter followed. Amina glanced at the folder, then back at him. Would you like me to translate all of it, or a specific section? She asked calmly. The laughter thinned. Victor raised an eyebrow. Oh, confident, are we? She said nothing. He thrust the folder toward her. Go on, impress us. There was a faint tightening in her hands as she accepted the document, not fear, but awareness. The paper was heavy, embossed with foreign seals. She opened it carefully. For a moment, the room seemed to shrink to the sound of distant violin strings and the soft rustle of pages. Her eyes moved steadily across the first paragraph. Something subtle changed in her posture. Her shoulders straightened. The softness in her expression sharpened into focus. She began to read silently. Victor folded his arms. Well, Amina lifted her gaze. This agreement, she began in a clear, measured voice, is between Carolyn Global Infrastructure and Al Sahir Holdings. Several guests stiffened. One of the foreign representatives narrowed his eyes. She continued. It establishes a phased investment into 3 urban development zones, beginning with the coastal expansion project. Victor's smile faltered slightly. That information is public, he said quickly. Amina nodded once. Yes. But what is not public is Clause 7. The air shifted. She turned a page. Clause 7 states that in the event of inspection failure by the independent review board appointed by Al-Sahir Holdings, the majority operational shares of the regional subsidiary will be transferred to their administrative division. The quartet faltered for half a second before recovering. Victor blinked. That's not. She looked back down at the text. It is written here, sir. In formal Gulf legal dialect. A murmur rippled outward. One of Victor's partners stepped closer. Is that accurate? Amina continued calmly. The English summary attached to this document omits the full enforcement language. Victor felt a cold line trace down his spine. Keep reading, he said, though his voice had tightened. Amina turned another page. There is also a discrepancy in Appendix C regarding milestone deadlines. She traced a line lightly with her finger. The Arabic text defines the deadline as 18 lunar months, not calendar months. That shortens your operational window. Silence fell heavy and complete. Victor grabbed the document from her hands. That's impossible. My lawyers reviewed every line. Amina did not react to the abrupt movement. Did they review the Arabic master copy, she asked gently, or the translated draft? His jaw clenched. The foreign investor from Al-Sahir spoke quietly to his colleague in Arabic. Amina understood every word. Victor noticed the flicker in her eyes and felt something shift inside him, the first crack in certainty. You're guessing, he said sharply. You're making this up. Amina met his gaze evenly. I would not do that, sir. She paused, then added. There are also penalty conditions tied to projected workforce numbers. If your hiring metrics are not met, administrative oversight increases. A glass slipped from someone's hand and shattered on the marble floor. No one moved to clean it. For the first time that evening, Victor felt exposed. How, he demanded, do you know this level of Arabic? Amina closed the folder carefully and handed it back to him. This is not conversational Arabic, she said. It is specialized legal language used in Emirati corporate agreements. Her tone remained respectful, but there was quiet authority in it now. And there are deliberate traps embedded in the phrasing. The word hung in the air. Traps, Victor repeated. Yes. Amina's gaze softened slightly, not in submission, but in recognition of what he was beginning to understand. There are clauses that appear balanced in translation but shift liability entirely in the original text. A bead of sweat formed near Victor's temple. Around them, the glittering hall no longer felt celebratory. It felt like a courtroom. You're telling me, Victor said slowly, that I signed something dangerous. Amina hesitated for the first time. I am telling you, she replied carefully, that this document favors the other party more than you realize. The silence that followed was suffocating. For years, Victor had prided himself on seeing weaknesses in others. On spotting flaws. On staying 10 steps ahead. And now, in front of investors, competitors, and foreign partners, a woman he had dismissed as insignificant had just revealed a vulnerability he had not seen. The music stopped entirely. In the reflection of the marble floor, under the dazzling chandeliers, Victor Carolyn felt something unfamiliar coil in his chest. Not anger, not pride, fear. Part 2. The silence in the gala hall was no longer elegant, it was heavy. The kind that presses against your ears and makes every breath sound too loud. Victor Carolyn stood motionless, the leather folder trembling slightly in his grip. The chandeliers still shimmered overhead, but the celebration had drained from the room like spilled champagne. Across from him stood Amina. The same gray uniform, the same quiet posture, and yet, nothing about her seemed small anymore. Explain the traps, Victor said, his voice lower now, stripped of its earlier arrogance. The foreign investors from Al-Sahir Holdings exchanged brief glances. Their expressions had tightened. They had not expected this. Amina did not rush. She stepped closer to the table where the contract lay and gently reopened it. Clause 9, she began, her finger tracing the elegant Arabic script, contains a conditional enforcement phrase. She translated slowly so everyone could understand. In the event of unforeseen infrastructural instability, the overseeing party reserves the right to initiate provisional management. One of Victor's executives frowned. That sounds standard. In English, Amina replied softly, yes. She lifted her gaze. But the Arabic wording implies that the overseeing party alone defines what qualifies as instability. There is no requirement for third-party verification. A murmur spread through the investors. Victor felt his throat tighten. That means, she continued, if they determine that even minor delays constitute instability, they can legally assume operational control. The implications sank in. Operational control. Control of his largest international expansion. Control of projects he had spent years building. That's manipulation, one of Victor's partners whispered. The representative from Al Sahir straightened. The agreement was presented transparently. Amina met his eyes respectfully. The translation was transparent, she said. The master language carries more authority. Victor turned sharply to his legal advisor, who stood pale near the stage. Did you read the original? The lawyer hesitated. We reviewed the certified translation. The room felt smaller. Victor's empire had been built on precision, on control, on never appearing foolish. And now he stood exposed, not by a rival CEO, not by a journalist, but by the woman who cleaned fingerprints from the marble. How do we stop this? He demanded. Amina took a slow breath. The contract has not yet been registered with the International Trade Commission, she said. Registration finalizes enforcement. And when does that happen? Tomorrow morning at 9. A clock somewhere in the hall ticked audibly. It was already nearly 11 at night. Victor's mind raced. Can amendments be filed? Yes, Amina replied. But both parties must agree before submission. The Al Sahir representative's jaw tightened. This negotiation is closed. Amina turned toward him calmly. With respect, she said in fluent Arabic now, her tone shifting into formal diplomatic cadence. A contract built on imbalance invites instability. Mutual trust ensures longevity. The sudden shift in language stunned the room again. Her pronunciation was precise, controlled, authoritative. The foreign delegates exchanged startled looks. Victor stared at her, realization dawning further. She was not just fluent. She was educated, strategic, composed under pressure. The same woman he had tried to humiliate minutes earlier. The Al Sahir representative responded cautiously in Arabic. Amina listened, nodding slightly. Then she translated for the room. They say amendments would require justification. Victor stepped forward. Tell them, he said hoarsely, that we are prepared to strengthen the partnership, not weaken it. Amina studied him. There was something different in his eyes now. Not superiority, not mockery, urgency, fear, perhaps even humility. She turned back to the delegates and spoke again in Arabic, her words flowing with measured confidence. She reframed the imbalance as a potential public relations issue. She emphasized shared growth. She suggested revised wording that protected both parties without undermining authority. The room watched as if witnessing a chess match. Every sentence she spoke shifted the atmosphere. Minutes stretched. Finally, the senior Al Sahir executive nodded slowly. Amina translated. They are willing to review proposed amendments tonight. Relief rippled across Victor's team. But Amina did not celebrate. We have little time, she said. We must draft carefully. Without waiting for instruction, she moved to the grand conference table near the stage. Someone pulled out a chair for her, instinctively, respectfully. The same guests who had ignored her an hour ago now leaned forward, attentive. Victor approached slowly. Why are you helping me? He asked quietly, so only she could hear. She did not look up from the document. I am helping the employees whose salaries depend on this company, she said. Hundreds of families. He swallowed. You could have walked away. Yes, after what I said. Amina paused then, finally meeting his eyes. You tried to reduce me to my uniform, she said calmly. But my dignity does not depend on your perception. The words struck deeper than any accusation. For the first time in years, Victor felt genuinely ashamed. I'm sorry, he said quietly. Not performative, not loud, just real. She held his gaze a moment longer, measuring sincerity. Then she nodded once. Apology accepted, she said. Now let us work. The next 2 hours unfolded with intensity. Amina dictated revised clauses in Arabic while Victor's legal team typed rapidly. She adjusted liability phrasing, inserted neutral arbitration requirements, clarified inspection standards, and replaced unilateral authority with joint oversight language. Her expertise was undeniable. At one point, a delegate challenged her wording. She responded firmly, citing specific precedents in Gulf commercial law. Her tone remained respectful but unwavering. Victor watched her with something close to awe. How many others had he dismissed over the years? How many capable minds had he overlooked because they did not wear expensive suits? Near 1 in the morning, the amended draft was complete. The Al Sahir representatives reviewed it in silence. Finally, the senior executive extended his hand. In the interest of long-term cooperation, he said in accented English, we agree. The handshake that followed was quieter than the earlier celebration, but infinitely more meaningful. Crisis had been avoided, disaster had been prevented, and it had not been Victor's intelligence that saved the night. It had been Amina's. As the delegates prepared to leave, Victor turned to her. "You studied international law," he said gently. "Why are you cleaning floors?" The question was no longer mocking. It was curious. Amina folded her hands calmly. "My husband invested in a logistics business that failed," she explained. Debt followed. When he passed away, the creditors did not disappear. Victor listened silently. "I chose work over pride," she continued. "Work feeds children. You have children?" he asked. "A daughter." Something shifted inside him. "You should not be pushing a cleaning cart," he said quietly. She gave the faintest hint of a smile. "There is no shame in honest work." He exhaled slowly. "No," he agreed. "There is shame in arrogance." The hall was nearly empty now. Broken glass had finally been cleaned. The musicians had packed away their instruments. Amina gathered her cart. "Tomorrow morning," she reminded him, "submit the revised contract before registration opens." "I will." She moved toward the service elevator. "Amina," he called. She turned. "I would like you to meet with my executive board this week." She considered him. As a consultant, he clarified. "Not as staff." Silence lingered. "I will think about it," she said. And then she stepped into the elevator. The doors slid closed. Victor stood alone in the vast marble hall, staring at his reflection beneath the chandeliers. For years he had believed wealth defined worth. Tonight, that illusion had shattered. He had mocked a woman for her uniform. He had assumed ignorance where there was brilliance. He had confused position with intelligence. And he had nearly lost everything because of it. Outside, the city lights shimmered like distant stars. Inside, something quieter, and far more important, had changed. Not the contract, not the partnership, him.